friends, Angela Harrington, Faith Deconstruction Coach. I want to chat with you a second about the isolation of deconstruction. Um, yeah, there's just a lot of different things that happen during deconstruction, but one of the most brutal things is just how isolating it is and how uncomfortable it is to just not have all the community and all the relationships that you used to have. So I've got 3 tips for you. This came up in a coaching call earlier. It came up in a training I was doing, and I thought, you know what? Let's put this out to the greater public. So I've got 3 tips for you to reduce the isolation of deconstruction, and none of them are to go out and make more friends. So they may not be what you're expecting, but none of them are to rush out and make new friends. So before I jump into that, for those of you who are new here, I'm Angela Harrington, Faith Deconstruction Coach, host of the Faith Deconstructing Cafe, and also an author of my first book coming out this fall called Kicking Toxic Religion to the Curb, Deconstruct Without Losing Yourself. Because make sure that you have yourself and that you love yourself and that you trust yourself is actually the greatest lesson in deconstruction. So let's hop into it. Let me know in the chat as we go if these things are resonant or if you felt that sting of isolation during deconstruction. So number one way to reduce the pain and the feelings of isolation that come from deconstructing your faith is to get really comfortable with being yourself, being with yourself and being by yourself. And I know you're like, I hate that, but it's really true. If we can't be comfortable by ourselves, then we're always going to be pursuing other relationships. Now, I'm going to put this in context because we know from Brene Brown's work and others that there are, we're wired for connection, so we need relationships to be fulfilled. Some of us need more, some of us need less, but what I want you to do is recognize that being in relationship with yourself is actually going to make you more resilient. It's going to make you more in tune with your body, and it's going to make it way easier to set healthy boundaries as you form new relations. So getting comfortable, even if it's really uncomfortable at first, but just getting comfortable and practicing being with yourself, going out on dates by yourself, doing special things just to love on yourself. It doesn't have to be extravagant self-care, but learning how to be present with yourself and to be grateful for all that your body is navigating, and to learn how to talk encouragingly, and just being okay by yourself and not feeling like you have to run off to another relationship is really going to help. Okay, so that's the number one. Number two way to lessen the isolation of deconstruction is not to sacrifice what you need just to keep people around. And you're probably like, well, some friends is better than no friends. But if you've ever been in a relationship with somebody who doesn't actually give a rip about your friendship, you'll know that's a pretty isolating place to be, right? Good, healthy relationships have to be equitable, which means everybody in the relationship is getting what they need. And so for that to happen, you have to be able to set healthy boundaries and make sure that that relationship is also meeting your needs. Otherwise, you're just going into codependency and building back up pouring more into the system of unhealthy relationships that you're trying to come out of. Right? So much of religious trauma, so much of what happens in toxic religious spaces that is really painful and harmful is rooted in teaching people not to think that their needs are important, teaching people that one-sided relationships are actually holy, but they're not. They're just not. And so learning how to say, okay, that person, I like that person, but they're not willing to show up in this relationship and help me like invest in this relationship. We just can't have the relationship that I want, is going to be really empowering. It comes down to setting healthy boundaries. And I know we talk about this a lot in the cafe, we talk about this a lot in my coaching groups. Boundaries are really hard. Again, boundaries are hard because nobody taught you to set healthy ones. Probably everybody who raised you was also growing up in that same toxic system. And guess what? Toxic systems don't want their people to have healthy boundaries, because if you have healthy boundaries, it's easier to say, "Oh, that's not a good thing." And you are more likely to undermine the unhealthy system, right? Because you're able to see why it's unjust. So one of the ways to reduce the pain of isolation is making sure that you're not going out and getting in new relationships that are one-sided or that are codependent or that just drain you and exhaust you. If you're going to make relationships, make them healthy. Okay. Number three, the number three way to reduce the pain and trauma and feelings of isolation during faith deconstruction is to get connected slowly. Again, I'm not going to say run out and make 50 new friends. I'm not going to say join every faith deconstruction group on Facebook until you find some people. All of those things, making friends, finding mentors, joining communities, going to conferences, all those things are important. But I'm going to tell you, if you feel this urge to rush out and make a bunch of new friends, if you feel this urge to rush out and be in community, it probably means you've got more work to do on that number one item, which was getting comfortable being with and getting comfortable being by yourself. Okay. If you can get connected slowly, it's going to do a couple of things. It's going to keep you out of bear mode. It's going to keep your nervous system from being agitated, which means that you're going to have a better chance of seeing what relationships are healthy. If you just rush from person to person to person and are like, hey, I have these needs. I have this empty spot on my roster where I could use some friends. Are you my friend? It reminds me of that. I think it's a Dr. Seuss book that's Are You My Mommy? Are You My Mommy? Are You My Mommy? Right? Like, at some point, somebody's going to say yes, even if they're not, right? And that's how you get into those unhealthy relationships. So, connecting with people, connecting with churches, connecting with communities is really important, but please do it slowly so that you can listen to your gut and you can listen to the rest of you that's saying, hey, I think this is a safe place, or you know what, something here feels off and I don't know what it is, without having your nervous system so agitated that you're just being emotionally pulled in every direction and you're having trouble getting centered. Okay, so those are my 3 tips on how to lessen the pain of isolation, because it is isolating. There's a lot of grief. We're going to lose a lot of people. Most of the time, we don't deconstruct and stay in the same relationships. Now, some of your relationships will survive and some of them will get better because people will be willing to invest and willing to keep the relationship equitable, which means that you can change and they're not going to be threatened by that. They're also not going to abandon you because of that. Really, really important just to give yourself the space to figure this out and realize that it probably has taken you years, if not decades, to build up this community that's now not accessible, either because it's not safe for you or because people are throwing temper tantrums and being defensive and rejecting you. But that community didn't happen overnight. And so, this new, healthier space that you're entering, this deconstructed faith, this community who's willing to stand by you, even as your beliefs change and as you question hard things, is not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen overnight. If you're looking for more connection, I would love to have you be part of the Facebook group, but not at the cost of doing these 3 things. So make sure you're getting comfortable being yourself. Don't sacrifice what you need just to keep people around, and get connected slowly so that your intuition and all the parts of you have a chance to determine whether you're safe or not. If you're interested in the cafe, hop over to angelajharrington.com, click on the button that says free group, and we'll see you over there. If you're watching this on the replay, I'd love to hear your comments and your thoughts. What have you noticed about isolation, and how have you overcome the isolation of being in faith deconstruction when that old community that you loved and valued so much and was so supportive is just no longer available? Also, there's a note in the comments if you're interested in learning more about that book that's coming out later this fall. We have an email list that you can join, and I'll email you as soon as pre-orders open up and we start talking about book launch. And then there's also a link there to join the wilderness community if you want to check that out. We're talking about sex this month, and it's gonna be a little spicy. We're gonna talk about how to tap into your sexuality and your sensuality just for you and not for anybody else, and why that's actually a really good, healthy thing. Those links are in the comments. I will be back a little bit later to chat with you. You guys have a good afternoon.